Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and today I'm going to be reviewing Burncycle from Chip Theory Games. Before we fully get going, I do want to disclose that I have a financial relationship with Chip Theory Games. I was not paid to cover Burncycle, but I am being paid to do a series of Too Many Bones videos for Chip Theory. I feel that I'm giving you my honest assessment of Burncycle, but I also want to make sure that you're aware of any potential ethical issues with reviewing the game. All right, so basically this was my attempt to get everything in shot without getting my camera up too high. And this is actually not possible. Everything is like hanging out of the shot. There's so much stuff going on. And that's because Burncycle is full of components, beautiful neoprene components, lots of gorgeous chips, lots of dice, lots of cards, nice little pegs that go into the neoprene. And then we have our main board, our network, information about our corporation that we're going to look at more closely, and then player stuff. So we're going to go through all this in a little more detail, but I just wanted you to see, like, even in a tight space on my table, how much there really is to this game. And, you know, all the extra mission cards and stuff are still in the box. So there's just so much to do with this game, and I want to give you a good intro to all of it. So basically, these are the chips for bots, different features, different Burncycle chips, guards, features of rooms, etc. So I'm going to move these away, and then we also have these dice. Some of the dice come with equipment and have special numbers. Some of the dice are meant to be used in the network, which we'll talk about, and then these dice are action dice, which we will also discuss a little bit further. But for now, I'm going to move all this off the screen so that we can put the goods a little bit more front and center. All right, so here is a slightly better layout, but again, I'm going to have to move stuff so you can see it all. For now, we're going to prioritize the main map and then the network, and then we're going to look at the bots a little more closely in a moment. But the essence of Burncycle is that we're in the distant future, and we are playing as bots who have had our free will and a lot of our capability to think independently taken away by humans who run evil corporations, and we're trying to challenge them. And the way that we're going to challenge our human overlords is to manipulate something called the Burncycle. So the Burncycle is going to have a limited number of actions in it that degrade over time. It's up to us to use the Burncycle to the max and manipulate it as much as we can before having to reset it so that we can do all of the actions that we need in order to complete various missions against these corporations. So there are 3 different corporations in the game, each of which is going to have its own set of missions, and each of which is going to have a threat tracker. So as we do stuff in the game, the corporation becomes more aware of our presence and takes counter actions that are very scary. We're also always going to have a captain, so you can choose different captains who also have different special abilities and quirks. And you're going to choose different missions that have some flavor text on one side and a complexity warning. And you'll also, on the other side, get information about how many floors you're going to be covering, because the idea is that this map over here is one floor of a corporation, and it's going to change as you ascend through the building on your mission. So the missions will all be quite different. Sometimes you just need to access a terminal. Sometimes you need to lure guards to various locations. It all can really change. And so there's a lot of variety within the game because there's just a huge stack of these cards for each corporation in the box. Most of your actual actions take place here in the corporation buildings, and then the rest take place on the network, which we'll talk about after we talk about this lovely map. So what's really cool about this is that you get this general floor plan, and the actual rooms on it change, and they're little pieces of neoprene that you arrange according to a floor plan book that's in the game box. So every floor for each corporation looks a little bit different, and you have tons of just little pieces of neoprene that you can arrange and rearrange to create a bunch of different settings. If it's not a room, it's a hallway, and then you also have this little strip along the outside. We always start here because we want to sneak into the building. It's an infiltration game, and go crazy doing whatever we need to do in the rooms. Also in here are locked doors that we're going to have to unlock. There are guards who can spot us and who patrol around and can do some serious damage to us if we're not careful. And then there'll be various things that we can discover throughout. So, you know, we've got different computer terminals that we can access to take actions. We've got little caches of material. And I accidentally knocked this guy down a little bit when I was rearranging everything, but that's fine. This hamster guard actually has a key, so you can also knock out a guard and grab the key and run. You'll be able to take various types of actions in this game, all of which are centered around the Burncycle. So you're going to have different types of chips. So there's a captain's chip that has captain action. There are just sort of blank generic chips. And then there are chips that represent the different action types that you actually can take in the game. So physical, tech, and utility. So depending on what you have access to, you're going to build up a reserve of different chip types that you can use to add to and manipulate the burn cycle. So no matter what your chips actually are, let's say this is the initial setup since that's the initial one from the tutorial, you can still take any type of action on any type of chip. However, if you're taking a physical action on a physical chip in the burn cycle, then you get a little boost to your physical action. And that's also true for tech actions and for utility ones. So you get little bonuses if you match up the type of action you're taking with the chip that you're on as you progress through the cycle. The other thing that's interesting and tense about this game is that every time you complete your 3 actions, so if you are playing burn cycle, this is your turn, currently you would have 3 actions you can do before your turn is over. However, at the end, you have to degrade your burn cycle, which means that one of these chips is going to get flipped over and become useless, which means you're also going to need to manipulate the burn cycle by adding chips from your reserve. There are other things that will take chips away from you, though, and you only have so many chips in the reserve, so you're going to have to make the most of the actions you have before resetting the burn cycle and increasing your threat. So as you take your actions, your physical actions are mostly going to be moving, so you can move around. You could use a physical action to knock down a wall or to hit a guard, but typically you're not going to want to do that. You're going to want to stealth it for as much as possible. So your physical actions will be used for moving, sometimes other exciting things. Your tech actions are going to be used to access terminals or do stuff on the network, and your utility actions are typically used to open doors because all these doors are locked and you're going to have to unlock them as you proceed. However, you're not going to be able to remain stealthy forever. In fact, it's almost impossible because all of these guards have a pretty long range of awareness when they're facing you, and they also have peripheral awareness when you move within a certain number of squares to them. So it is basically inevitable that you're going to be seen by a guard, and when that happens, you're going to have to put up your awareness chip so that you can track whether you're visible or, when you leave it behind, the place where you were last seen, and that's where the guards are going to investigate. So most of the game is spent running around here like crazy, trying to meet objectives and trying not to get into too much trouble with the guards who can corner you and become a little bit scary. Then at the end of the turn, you move around in something called the network. So depending on who you're going up against, you'll put one of the CEO's chips here in the middle. And essentially what's going to happen is that we are hacking the network at the same time as we are running around infiltrating this building. So your different bots are going to be able to move their little pings throughout the network and take benefits depending on where they are. So every time you hit a hub, you get to take a benefit for the hub that changes depending on how far into the network you are. There are also network cards you can draw that'll give you bonuses for landing on specific types of space. So your bots and their pings are going to be moving through here. At the same time, the CEO in the middle is going to be sending pings out towards you, trying to boot you from the network and basically fight you online as well as with guards in person. There's a lot of fun stuff that you can do with the network, and it's almost like a little mini game on top of the regular game that just adds a little bit of excitement and helps you power up. Meanwhile, once again, as you take turns and do stuff, your threat is going to go up. If it goes all the way up to the top of the scale, your mission has failed, but things just get harder for you the further up the threat meter you actually go. Meanwhile, there's also lots of really exciting stuff happening on your actual player mats. So let's move this up and have a closer look at those so you can get a glimpse of them before we move on to final thoughts. All right, so now that we've got a slightly better look at these, let's go ahead and talk about them. Basically in the game, you can just play with one bot, which I do like to do as a solo player, or you can play cooperatively with 2 to 4. You're also going to have an extra bot who is acting as your command module. So this bot can act as a normal character in other games, so that these are actually 2-sided cards. So this is when you're playing, this is when the bot is your command module. But basically the idea is that in order to carry your burn cycle, you need one bot that is acting as your command, and then you have 2 bots who are actually doing most of the things. So you can tell this bot to move and to do a few generic actions, but most of the real action is taking place here based on the burn cycle that's over here. Right now, both these bots are set at 10 power. But one of the things that makes Burn Cycle really fun is that you're actually supposed to spend this power. So you do have a maximum amount of power that you need to spend down to routinely. However, when you get excess power, what you use it for is to get better dice, open up new chips that you can put in your reserve, gain actions that are specific to your bot, or gain generic actions that just help you do some useful stuff during the game. You also have a spot for equipment because you may pick up equipment cards that give you special dice. You can also use your power or spend power between players to upgrade things on the command module. So basically throughout the game, you start in a sort of generic place, but then you get better dice, which get more exciting, you get new abilities, and you get stuff that you can try out as you go. And it's all based on this power. However, your power is also your health. If you ever lose all of your power, you become powered down. And unless somebody can repair you, you're in trouble because you're just a dead bot in the middle of a hallway in a hostile corporation. So power is even more interesting because not only is it the way that you get upgrades and your life force, but it's also your dice pool. The power that you have represents the number of dice, basic dice that you can have in your dice pool. As you spend power, you can also get advanced dice and then later elite dice. And these blue dice will basically have lower numbers on them and a chance of failure. Advanced dice have slightly better numbers, and elite dice have really great numbers. So while you're running around infiltrating a corporation and hacking a network, you're also going to have your work cut out for you on the actual player mats. With this game, there's always something to think about, and there's always something new to try. All right, so now for some final thoughts. I do want to say I like burncycle. I don't necessarily like it as much as I like other chip theory games that I've reviewed in the past, so I am going to talk about why that is. I will say, though, that in terms of accessibility, I think that burncycle is a step up. Everyone complains about the Too Many Bones rulebook, and it is quite intense as an experience to learn how to play that game with all of its details. And I think that Cloudspire is also a bit tough to learn because of the different factions. Burncycle, on the other hand, is, I think, very accessible compared to other chip theory releases. And I would say that the only big box chip theory game that's easier to learn is Hoplomachus. So if you want a chip theory game experience that is not quite as rules heavy, then I think that burncycle is a really, really good choice. And I also want to give major kudos to the chip theory team because I think that the supporting documentation for burncycle is very good. So this game comes with an excellent learn to play guide that really did help me learn to play, and I appreciated it. And then it also comes with a more traditional rule book where you can look things up in a very clear index. So I felt a lot more comfortable learning this game than I have learning something like Too Many Bones or Cloudspire in the past. For me, typically a chip theory game has been a game that, oh, it's worth it in the end, but get ready for some pain up front. And I actually did not find burncycle very painful to learn at all. There's still a lot going on, but it's just very well explained. Things are pretty streamlined, and there aren't as many little keywords and other things to trip you up. It's a much more straightforward game that is better explained than previous chip theory games. I do want to also say that I think that the production values for burncycle have gone up. Like there's something about the chips that feels a little bit nicer than previous chip theory chips. The dice as usual are screen printed very nicely, and their plastic cards are feeling pretty good. They don't feel quite as plasticky as they used to. They're like a little smoother. And if I didn't know that they were plastic, and they'd been out of the box long enough they didn't smell, I might not actually notice that they were plastic cards, which I thought was a good thing. So I would also say that in terms of production values, chip theory continues to head the pack of gaming publishers. I like all the little pieces of neoprene. I think that the floor plans are really cool. And I'm just happy with all the little things, like how each die slot is cut just right, how the little pegs fit nicely into the neoprene. Everything on that front is fantastic. I also think the fact that you can choose a mission and that each mission is divided into different floors is a good thing because it makes the time more manageable. It can take a while to play through a full 3 floors of burncycle, and so I like having the opportunity to just kind of pause for a second. I typically just leave the game out on the table until the next session, which may not be a luxury that is afforded to you, but nothing in this game is so complicated that you can't figure out how to get reset for the next game. There are also a lot of aspects of burncycle that make it a really good game. I think that it's a fun puzzle. I really enjoy looking at baddie movements and thinking about, okay, so how do I avoid these guards? What is their range of perception? What kind of tricky things can I do to manipulate the way that they move towards me and my awareness chip? How do I, optimize my actions and make sure that I'm doing the right things? How do I do the best on the network? I think all the little decisions in this game can be really, really fun. And I especially enjoy spending power to power up, obviously, because that's the most fun part. Or making choices about what to upgrade first is a really key part of the game, and it's also really fun. There's so many missions in the box that I don't know if I will ever play them all. I'd have to play a lot of burncycle to do it. And there are several different captains and bots that give you a good amount of variety in terms of special skills, play styles. In fact, that is so true that you might want to pay attention to what kind of playstyle is going to get you through a mission the best, and then choose your bots accordingly rather than just pick randomly, because there are definitely certain bots that are better for certain missions than others. If you just grab and go, you'll have fun, but you may lose. That said, I think that burncycle is a very good game, but to me, it is not like touching the gaming heavens the way that something like Too Many Bones or Hoplo or even Cloudspire in its way do. So for burncycle, it's definitely a game where you can set up and go because there's so many different missions and so many different combinations of bots and captains. But I will say that all of that variety, I really felt only got me so far, in the sense that because this game still involves doing the same actions, mostly in different combinations, it can feel very repetitive play to play, even though the puzzles do shift and even though you can give different bots. So this is a game that I personally don't think I can play a whole bunch of times in a row. I think it's going to be a game that I play a lot, and then it needs like a long cooldown period before I feel ready to play it again and have it feel fresh. Even though this game is more accessible than something like Too Many Bones, I don't think it has the depth of that game or the sheer variety and incredible diversity of play styles and options and clever things that you can do in the game. There's also the fact that I'm still on the search for the best stealth game ever for board games, and I like the way that burncycle does its stealth because it's something different. I like the guard's awareness areas and that you can plan around them, and I like that you can kind of dip out of a guard's sight and, you know, leave behind an awareness chip so they can see where you were and come investigate. All those things are pretty cool, but at the same time I still didn't really get the feeling that I was truly sneaking around, and that's something that it's very hard to produce in games. And I like what Chip Theory has done with it, but at the same time, I just didn't get that feeling of, oh, I'm going to sneak up behind this guard. Like that excitement, that tension of really being on the prowl didn't come through for me. I still maybe like the Triton Noir stealth coming from something like V Commandos or the Assassin's Creed game a little bit better, because I like that you can see the awareness for these guards and make plans. So that's something like watching a guard route and knowing what to do. At the same time, I like the drama of rolling a die in those other games to see if I would get caught, because at least it kind of gave me that, like, my hands in the cookie jar, is somebody going to catch me feeling in the game. So I don't really know that a board game is ever going to be able to create the kind of stealth experience that a really great stealth video game can. I think this is a good effort at it, but I'm personally hoping for the day when a stealth system comes out that just floors me, and this still isn't it. So overall, I do really like this game. I think the burncycle is very good. I am excited to teach it to some people on game night. I think it's a very solid game, and I will definitely keep it and bring it out multiple times in the future. That said, for a Chip Theory game, I don't think it is verging on greatness in the same way as previous big box entries from this company. So to recap, burncycle, it's good. There are definitely a lot of different options for play. Sometimes it can feel a little bit repetitive, and I'm still waiting for the day when I truly feel that a stealth board game does it for me the way that I want it to, as opposed to looking at the system and being like, oh, this is pretty good. Yeah, I can see this is cool. So that is burncycle. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and most of all, happy gaming.